Berlin was once home to the world's fastest and potentially most dangerous racing circuit. But if we're going to talk about the history of motor racing, then we need
Hello.
an old school friend.
Hi, I'm Tommy from the YouTube channel P1 with Matt and Tommy. We have 500,000 subscribers and a podcast basically dedicated to Formula One.
And I want to show you what's left of Berlin's infamous racing circuit, the Avus.
Let's go check it out.
So, Tommy, this is the most famous thing that's left, really, at the Avus, at the kind of mad race course that Berlin used to have.
Yeah, one of the craziest F1 tracks that's ever been on the Formula One calendar. I remember looking at encyclopedias and things when I was a kid, looking at all the circuits that have been there in Formula One. And the track map itself just stands out so prominently. Just massive straight line, the two curves. And like nothing else Formula One's ever seen before.
Yeah, it's just two long straights, foot to the floor. How fast can you go? And actually, we can kind of see that from the name of the place, right? Avus, we would say, but it's an abbreviation, which essentially stands for like automobile test track. So thus the two long straights. So you can really see how far you can go. But before we talk about what happened here, I'd like to talk about how it was built in the first place. Where did it come from? So we're talking early 20th century. I imagine people with a bit finer clothes than we have, and probably some epic mustaches at this time, because to own a car in 1909, when this idea is birthed, I mean,
you got to be rich.
You got to have some cash, and we can see that from the name of the people who start to find it. They're the Imperial Motor Car Club. Which is a nod to the Kaiser, who was a young man who was fond of technology and traveling and showing off. And, he was not the greatest leader Germany ever had. Bit of a disaster with the whole... Have you heard of World War I?
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't good for him.
No.
He gets booted out the country at the end, but he takes his cars with him. The government sends them for him on a special train to his new house in the Netherlands. And although they had started digging to build this track in 1913, they'd stopped obviously during the war. So this place opens 1921. What was it like for would-be racers of that time?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the first motor racing circuits in the world, really. You had Brooklands in the UK, was the first kind of purpose-built race circuit, and Indianapolis, but there were no others really around in the world. So when this opened in 1921, it was a very unique track and a unique experience. Horse and carts were, how people traveled around most of the time. So the fact that you could come here and just drive your car as fast as you possibly could, because you had these two enormous straights.
And because it was the first road in the world built only for cars.
Exactly.
That's what I read.
Yeah, exactly. So it allowed people at that time to basically go foot to the floor and not worry about crashing into horses and carts and children. Exactly. Yeah. So this allowed people to test cars, but also test the road surfaces as well.
This is one of the first asphalted roads in the world as well.
Indeed, yeah. Right? Yeah, exactly.
And the way it would work, like if you're a car owner at this time, you're quite wealthy, well-to-do, you want to see how fast this thing can go, is there used to be this great big building over here, completely gone now, but it's quite an epic looking thing. Like, we've been looking at these old photos and like you drive through there and you would pay 10 marks per lap to drive around it, which a lot of the sources I read said was expensive. But in the next couple of years, Germany underwent hyperinflation, so 10 marks became something of a bargain. But I reckon someone like you would have paid for the 1,000 mark quarterly pass.
Well, exactly. I mean, there's a very famous circuit in Germany called the Nürburgring, and it's still a toll road now that people can pay money to test their cars on. So really, this was like the early adoption of that. Very different circuit, of course.
Yeah.
But still the same idea.
And so they did actually do races here. In fact, when it opened to kind of birth the place, there was a race with a quite famous or important winner.
Yeah, it was. It was Fritz von Opel, who, if you recognise the name Opel, you'd be correct. It was the grandson of the founder of Opel cars. So.
Oh, fantastic. And Opel, actually, this was a test track. They tested a bit more than just a regular car foot to the floor here. In the middle of the 1920s, some of the early rocket cars were tested here by Fritz von Opel, actually. So this is one of the kind of important places of the birth of the German rocket industry.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to test a rocket car, a massive long straight is the perfect place
Yeah.
to do it, because you're going to hit very high speeds very quickly, and you need a lot of space.
A lot of space to stop.
Of course.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was perfect for it.
Yeah. And then, what can I say? We're in the 20s. It's a very exciting time in Germany, particularly in Berlin. Motor racing, at least at the start of the 20s, is more popular than football. There's six-figure crowds that line the road to come and watch the races here. Germany has a weak democracy at this time. In the beginning of 1933, Hitler comes to power, and the Avus actually reaches something of kind of one of the peaks of its popularity at this time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, 1937 is when a lot of things changed at the circuit. There was a lot of track changes. There was the grandstand that's behind us now that was built. In 1937, you had a non-championship Grand Prix. So you had a Grand Prix season. This is pre-Formula One existing in 1950. And what happened was you had the normal Grand Prix season, 1937, and they'd also do non-championship races as well at different circuits around the world. And Avus had one in 1937. And basically, the Mercedes-Benz and Auto Union, which are now Audi, the two very obviously famous German manufacturers, rocked up to this circuit, and they knew straight away, with two massive long straights, that you need to kind of adapt your car. So what was quite interesting was, and bearing in mind this is 1937, they built their cars for incredible speed. They put this very streamlined bodywork on, which covered the wheels and things like that, so they could just go
They were called
as
the
fast
Silver
as possible.
Arrows, right?
They were, yeah. So Mercedes, the Silver Arrows, had this extreme kind of bodywork over what would be a kind of normal Formula car around that time. And what was amazing was the speeds they were doing on this track is absolutely insane reading. You know,
Like
they were doing
over 200.
Yeah, they were doing like 300 kilometers of an hour in a car in 1937 with essentially bicycle wheels, really thin tires, so not much grip, no seat belts. The whole car was just made of aluminium.
So lightweight, but
no power steering, so your hands would be covered in blisters from just the track. Your feet were being burnt by the metal pedals and things like that. And the helmets were just basically a leather skull cap and some goggles.
That'll be fun.
And you were going down this road, reaching like 190 miles an hour.
Speeds that today you would think, I'm going quite fast.
It's
if you're
still
on the German
exactly.
autobahn.
Exactly, like it's still insane speeds. And the actual race that happened there was won by Mercedes.
Yeah.
And it was actually set a record because the circuit was such huge straights, and you had the average speed was around 170 miles an hour for the whole race. And that was so fast that average speed of a road race wasn't beaten until 1986 at the Indianapolis 500. And you think how much...
50 years thereabouts.
Yeah, nearly 50 years. You think how much evolution there was in the car industry, aerodynamics, everything like that.
I mean, a car from the 50s compared to a car in the 60s is a massive jump.
Exactly.
Let alone the 30s to the 80s. This is huge. But yeah, I mean, there was a grandstand over here. It's been fixed up and so on. We'll take a look at that in a bit. But that would have been probably the best seat in the house, because you wanted to be looking at this section where we are now, right?
Yeah.
This was the highlight of this course, especially in 37.
Yes.
Can you tell us about it? What was
Yeah,
it?
so in 37, as you can see, it's very flat, which is how it started, the North Curve where we are now. But in around 1936, they decided the Avus wasn't fast enough. Even though it was already absolutely insane speeds. And
This is very, very, very typical of the Nazis, right? This is Nazi Germany, 1933 to 1945, and for them, everything had to be the biggest.
the best, the fastest.
The best, so
Yeah.
whatever. So for them to make something that's the fastest makes sense. And actually, while they were building this North Curve here, in 1936, there were no motor races here because there's no North Curve, but they did actually use the track during the Olympic Games for the 50-kilometer walking, for the cycling, but also as a stretch of the marathon, which was famously won by a Korean runner who was running under the flag of Japan. And when he wins, He's holding this oak laurel, and it's covering up his Japanese flag, and he's looking very kind of somber and serious. Doesn't look like someone who's just won the marathon, the final event of the Olympics. And this actually became a symbol of the Korean resistance to Japanese occupation as well. But yeah, that's a year before 1937. Then the curve is ready, and like, what does it look like?
So we mentioned that this track is probably the most insane circuit in Formula One. It also had the most probably insane corner in Formula One history. So right where we're stood now, as I mentioned, flat today, but they decided that to make the course even faster, they would build essentially banking. And this corner was dubbed the Wall of Death because it was 18 meters wide, 8 meters tall, and it allowed, of course, the cars that were coming down this very long straight to carry as much speed as possible because they wouldn't have to slow down too much and drop a load of speed off before they carried. So they could carry the speed around this amazingly quick corner. But, you know, it's called the Wall of Death for a reason because it was incredibly dangerous. Modern Formula One now, you've got all sorts of safety precautions and Armco barriers and, things that need to happen. But here, they just built that curve and it was very much, if you go over the top, then tough luck.
Yeah, and that actually did happen on a number of occasions. I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of the deadliest courses in history. Yeah,
definitely. So the people that have been kind of over that turn, one of them was an actual German journalist and racing driver, and he managed to fly over the turn, lose control of his car, drop down, and as mentioned before, no seat belts, so you just fly out your car.
Yeah.
And he flew out his car into these trees and survived and was without a scratch.
Absolutely amazing.
Which is incredible, but not everyone, of course, was so fortunate.
No, especially because the curve itself was also made of bricks.
Indeed.
It wasn't the grippiest surface, especially in the wet. So you've got a dangerous surface, no barrier, and of course the Nazis encouraging as much speed as possible, right? But that wouldn't be for long. He said that this was 1937. That's very close to World War II beginning, which is September 1939 with the German invasion of Poland. And throughout World War II, it's kind of funny. The Nazis were quite keen for sport to continue because everything is fine. We're winning.
Yeah.
But racing doesn't. So football continues right up until 1944, I think, like very deep in, until really they can't do anything anymore. But racing is put to bed for quite a while. And then, of course, everything around here is going to be damaged in the war. We're out towards the western part of the city. And the countries that were bombing Berlin were the UK and the USA. They came from the west. And if you're in a bomber plane, you've got a high incentive to drop your bombs and leave. So even though the whole city would be hit in some form, this area is more likely to be more heavily hit. Although the racecourse does run alongside train tracks, admittedly, but through the woods. So quite a few of the buildings here are damaged and not fully repaired until late 40s, early 50s or so.
Yeah, and then in 1954 was when they hosted another non-championship Grand Prix.
So this, like a kind of a show-off, a display, a bit of fun.
And it very much was a show-off because, again, like that race in 1937, it was very much a flex from Mercedes because... So Formula One existed at this time. It started in 1950. And in 1954, they had the Berlin Grand Prix here. And Mercedes bought three of their cars that were, dominating Formula One at that time. And Juan Manuel Fangio, who's a very famous driver, won 5 Formula One World Championships. He got pole position and would finish the race in second. And it was actually a Mercedes 1-2-3 finish. And they were so dominant, they actually lapped the entire field 3 times.
3 times.
So, yeah.
Caning it into the North Curve with no worry about no barrier.
Exactly. And this was very reminiscent of 1937 in the same kind of tactics that they could fit their car with streamlined bodywork, covered the wheels. And, of course, that's when they were reaching amazing speeds again.
but it's not the most well-known, or perhaps especially for a Formula One fan, not the most important race to have happened here.
Of course. So the most important race that happened here was the only time that Avus hosted an official Formula One World Championship race. The Nürburgring, as mentioned before, very famous German race circuit.
Hockenheim as well.
And yeah, Avus still to this day is the only German race that wasn't hosted in either Hockenheim or the Nürburgring. And the Nürburgring was incredibly dangerous, of course, but they decided that they would host a race here, even though this is, of course, a very dangerous circuit.
Yeah, well, part of the reason for that is the mayor of West Berlin at the time, a figure who is still very much beloved today. His name was Willy Brandt. When you flew in to come and meet me, you landed at the Willy Brandt airport, right?
Yeah.
So he's mayor of West Berlin in the 1950s, and there's a key word there, is West Berlin. Germany is divided into two countries, 1949, and West Berlin, even though nominally it belongs to West Germany, it's deep inside East German territory. West Berlin has one border. It's completely surrounded by the communist world, and it's part of the capitalist world. The Berlin Wall isn't up yet, but he wanted not just to bring entertainment for his own people. It's not just a nice day out for West Berliners. It's a message to the world. We're here, we're fine, but also don't forget about us.
Yeah, and Formula One at that time, even though still very early days, was, a world championship where drivers from all over the world raced. Interestingly enough, Mercedes weren't actually racing at this time. They had boycotted motorsport altogether after a disaster at Le Mans in 1955, which meant they pulled out of all motorsport, and they didn't actually return to motorsport until 85.
Oh, wow.
So the only German kind of representation in that race in 1959, when Avus hosted the Formula One World Championship race, was Porsche. However, as we mentioned the death curve, it was very common in those days for the drivers to race in the support series, such as Formula 3 and Formula 2. And a French driver called Jean Berra, he was set to drive for Porsche in the Formula 1 Grand Prix. However, he crashed at this North Curve. And unlike that German journalist who we mentioned, he flew out his car but hit a flagpole, and it killed him instantly.
At least it was quick, I guess. But yeah, it shows you why it's called the Wall of Death, for sure.
Exactly. So a really, really dangerous time for Formula One and motorsport in general. So Porsche actually withdrew their team for the whole race, which was unfortunate for a driver called Wolfgang von Trips, who was a German driver, very close. He was very, very close actually to winning the World Championship, who would have been the first German driver to win the World Championship, who, sign of the times, was tragically killed himself in a crash at Monza, which left only one driver from Germany in that race, a driver called Hans Hermann, and he had a spectacular crash at the South Curve, and he was, there's some incredible pictures online where his car flipped, barrel rolled, and thankfully for him, he did fall out his car because they had no seatbelts, and his car flipped through the air, and he was just there lying on the ground and could just get up, and thankfully the car didn't hit him anyway.
And he could just walk it off. Actually, speaking of cars flipping, I mean, the Wall of Death, eventually they're like, oh, maybe having the Wall of Death isn't good. Let's get rid of it. They make it flat. They shorten the straights. They tried to build another South Wall of Death at some point, but we'll talk about that later. Eventually the course ends up smaller, slower, a bit of a chicane before the North Curve as well. But getting back to cars flipping, at the end of the 1960s, this was one of the parts that really lit my face up when I found out about it, was a woman named Heidi Hetzer. And she's quite famous in Germany. I mean, a younger generation wouldn't know her, but she drove around the world a couple of times and in vintage cars and stuff like this. And she's, I mean, as you'll know, there's not many women in motorsport either.
Course, yeah.
So she's a super known woman in motorsport. But this seems to be a lesser known story that I heard on a podcast from the Berliner Zeitung. So thanks, Berliner Zeitung. Her dad owned an Opel car dealership in West Berlin. And she heard that this race was going on. It was open to people and so she actually, I don't want to say stole. I think she said
Borrowed, yeah.
She borrowed a car from her dad, an Opel Commodore or something. Sorry, I'm not the car guy.
Yeah.
But she borrows this car, drives around the racetrack. She does crash. She flips into a birch tree, and she must have flipped on her side like this, because then she was able to kind of bounce back off the tree, bounce flat, continue the race, win, and then appears in the newspaper with a bloody face winning this. And her dad sees this and he's like, guess you borrowed my car?
Yeah, not the best way to kind of stay away from like your parents noticing, to go on and win the race and then be in the newspaper.
She should have hit the brakes and come forth. She should have got away with it. But yeah, to survive this is absolutely amazing. But once the wall of death is gone, at that point, the Berlin Wall is also already up, 1961. Even since the Nazi era, this has been connected to the highway. So if you wanted to drive out of West Berlin, you would drive down the Avus this way. I'm sure the biggest problem in Formula One is moving everything, every time.
Of course.
Well, imagine if there was a race in North Korea today, right? They say that they're going to do it, everything's going to be fine, but you don't know if it is. And so as a manufacturer, as a team, as a principal, getting in and out of West Berlin is annoying.
Yeah.
So Formula One never comes back. But there are still other races that happen during this period.
Yeah, so there was very little racing there around this time, like you say, for all its efforts to be this like unique track. Of course, when it becomes public roads, it's just too difficult to close down, as particularly such a huge stretch of and being such a well-connected part going into Berlin.
Yeah, it's like the main road into Berlin from the west, pretty much. And that becomes an even bigger problem in the 1990s, by which point the Berlin Wall is down, Germany is reunified, but there are still F2 and F3 races hosted here.
Yeah, so the races that they have here in the kind of late 80s, early 90s, they hosted something called the DTM, which is the German Touring Car Championship. And equally, they also have kind of regional Formula 3 races. So it's for young drivers to kind of show what they can do and then hopefully make their way to Formula 1. And that's very fitting because in 1990, they had a German Formula 3 race here. And that race was won by Michael Schumacher.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, I'm sure many people will have.
Schumi, as he's known over.
Yeah, Schumi, exactly. And Michael Schumacher, of course, this is 1990. Michael Schumacher wins this junior race. He goes on to dominate that championship, the German Formula 3 championship. And it's literally only 1 year later, he is in Formula 1, makes an instant impact, and immediately, becomes this star of the future, and of course goes on to win 7 world titles, actually breaking Juan Manuel Fangio's record, who we spoke about in 1954, as the driver with the most championships.
So Michael Schumacher, big deal. You heard it here first?
Indeed, yeah. So yeah, this was one of his early wins, but also one of his kind of last victories before he became a Formula One driver.
Before he became Michael Schumacher.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. I never knew that either before we started looking into this. But yeah, that really is the final stage. Like, it's a public road. It's annoying to close it. It no longer gets the top end of motorsport either. And so eventually we reach 1998. It winds down. They have a goodbye race.
They do, yeah, like to celebrate the history of the track.
Which is won by an Opel car as well.
Yeah.
So like it's a kind of perfect mirror from start to finish, 1921 to 1998. And then these days we kind of have what's left. And hey, I'm a tour guide. I know what's left. I thought it would be really cool if we went around and explored it.
Yeah, definitely. I love seeing old racetracks and thinking about how, these great drivers were literally driving on this piece of road. So there's plenty to see.
Well, we should head over this way and run around the death curve. Let's go do it.
Let's do it.
So the first thing I want to show you, looks great, right? But if you come with me and you look through, bear in mind...
Because there's a nice little gap here.
Look at that. And, it's pretty obvious what it is, right?
Exactly. So there's the grandstand. Of course, it's been updated today. I think you mentioned that it was quite derelict a few years ago.
It was. I remember driving past it in my tour bus, taking people out to Potsdam, and yeah, people would be like, what's that? It's like, well, it's got all these weeds growing out of it. They used to test rocket cars here. Don't worry about it. The death curve is gone.
Yeah.
But what's really cool is that in the last 10 years or so, it's been bought by a company with a bit of money and a bit of care for the history. It is a protected monument. And it has been fixed up. It's not open to the public as far as I know. There's a couple of offices inside of there. I mean, hey, P1 is doing all right. This should be your office.
It would be a cool office, wouldn't it? To be right at the track where obviously like all the fans would have watched the race from. You'd have got an amazing view, like the start-finish straight would have been right there. So you'd have seen the start of the race. And of course, watch them.
Well, the end.
And the end, and the finish, of course. So, speaking of the finish line, I think you had the podium as well, like straight opposite.
Used to be directly opposite. A good place to stand if you've just nicked a car from your dad, so
yeah.
in a race. Yeah.
In front of a big stand of everyone watching.
Yeah.
Hoping they don't recognise
No one
you.
will find out. The perfect crime. Should we see what else we can see just in this area?
Yeah, sounds good.
Let's head over this way. And so this has to be the most iconic thing that's left. And I mean, it says motel. Would you have spent the night there? That was right on cue, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, that's a perfect example. Probably not, because the traffic noise, it's not the most picturesque. It's a cool piece of history, of course, but to stay there, why would you want a hotel right next to the busiest road, probably in
One of the
Berlin,
busiest in the whole city, yeah. I mean, well, imagine you were invited there for the GP in the 1950s, and I think you would have quite liked it.
Oh yeah, very.
It's quite a modern, cool building. I mean, not very typical for the architecture style of the period it was built, the 1930s either. The Nazis usually went for a lot more straight and harsh lines. To see a few curves is not unheard of, but a bit rare, although it wasn't built by the government as far as I know. But it did have a practical function.
Yeah, it was the race control tower, and it was situated essentially right next to the Wall of Death curve.
Yeah, the 43-degree curve.
Yeah.
I mean, what is it like? What's the steepest curve in racing today?
So that is Zandvoort. It's actually very uncommon for a circuit in Formula One now to have banking. But there is one at Zandvoort in the Netherlands, which is 18 degrees of banking. And even then, it's quite a spectacular sight. You can see the cars carry the speed round. They are very much, at an angle. So to think 43 degrees is absolutely, huge. And you look at the old pictures because, we've still got this building with the Mercedes star still there.
So you can really work out how tall it was.
Exactly.
Just beneath where it says Motel Avus.
I think it was probably just the one below that. And that was even, of course, as well, where the curve was starting to straighten out at this point to lead you on to this long straight. So not even the highest point, which would have been around
right
here.
Over in the distance here. Absolutely mad. So yeah, you can see why they changed it.
yeah, it didn't make sense for modern Formula One cars or anything like that, or just generally like motorsport, like we said when they came back here in the 90s. You couldn't have a kind of curve like that nowadays.
No, it would be way too dangerous. There was, of course, a south curve as well. I mean, the best way to get there is to hop in a car, go down and have a look at what's left. And they did try to build a copy of the death curve as well, so there would have been two of these wall of deaths. And yeah, I think we should go hop in the car and have a look at them. So
we can see just how long the Avus straight is.
You can time me going down it, my foot to the floor. Right, let's go have a look this way. So unfortunately, one of the things I wanted to show you, it is the podium. It's kind of still there. I'm not sure if it's the original, but we can't find out because
it's dangerous. It's very, very dangerous. Yeah, so we've had a look to try and find it. Obviously, that is the way to get onto Avus or the autobahn. And actually, I was looking to try and see where it was because it is on Google Maps. And you basically have the old kind of podium there from the era, just like a slab of concrete with a little plaque on it. But there's only one review that says, positives, beautiful old relic of the Avus racetrack. Disadvantage, less than 10 meters from the highway, very dangerous to get there. So I think we'll leave that one.
Yeah, we're going to leave it. We like making these videos, but they're not worth dying for. So
No.
You can look it up on Google yourselves.
Okay, we've found the tribune.
In 400 meters, slide right onto the A115 slip road to Magdeburg, Leipzig.
And now we have to weirdly like loop around to get onto it.
It's like there's a dual carriageway behind the dual carriageway. We're
Yeah.
driving past the Avus, just here.
There we go.
What a beauty. Yeah, I mean, this is, you know, roughly where people would be
In 500 meters,
getting their 10 marks ready to do their lap.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, there is no unlimited speed limit on this section today.
So we're stuck doing.
Well, probably 60 kilometers an hour by the looks of things.
Here we go. So you can see just there.
Avus out this side,
Yeah.
and then the Tribune is going to come up again on the right side. We've just driven right around it.
Here we go. There's the grandstand. That will be the podium that we couldn't find somewhere over there. Oh, I can see it. I could just see it. We might freeze frame on the video. And this is the Avus. Very cool. Straight road. So we're now heading to the original South Curve, which, according to Google Maps, is 8.7 kilometers away. So that is not the most interesting of circuits, has to be said,
Yeah,
but a very cool piece of history.
absolutely. And I do love it when I'm with my tour groups and I tell them, you know, you've seen the stand, we're literally driving on a racetrack, you know?
Yeah.
We're not quite in Fritz van Opel's rocket car. That guy is. Harley's gone past us or something similar.
But it is weird to think like this was a Formula One track.
Absolutely mad. And now the speed limit is 80 kilometers an hour.
Slightly slower than the 300 kph that they were doing in 1937.
So the Avus is not actually quite as straight. There's a slight curve on it. It must be, what, 5 degrees or 10 at the most? So you wouldn't have even noticed us drive around it. Are we pulling off here?
No, we've still got. We're driving down this road for 5 whole minutes.
Not very fast speeds.
Yeah. I think the lap time here was about 5 minutes in the kind of 1930s to
And I
do
mean,
the whole.
At least 4 of that's got to be a straight.
Exactly. It's amazing actually that, you know, there was a few crashes, and I think they had some of the races in the wet, which would have been very, very scary, where you could barely see. But not many kind of, you know, famous accidents where people would go off on the straight. It was mainly the turns.
Mainly the curves. When you talk about it being difficult to see in the wet, you don't just mean because of the rain, because of the spray.
The spray, yeah. The cars would kick up spray, not as much as Formula One cars now, of course, but it would be very difficult. I mean, obviously it's not the same, but you know, there are simulators and things now, and if you load up, you know, a 1930s Formula One car, it's like driving on ice because there's no grip. It's very like no power steering.
You've got
almost
goggles
feel
rather than a visor.
Yeah, and you're basically like because the tires are so thin, you've not got the tread on the road giving you grip, so it almost feels like the car's floating. People would have been, you know, it's not like you can just let go of the steering wheel and just drive straight. You had to be constantly adjusting the wheel to, you know, basically like
Stay alive.
Stay alive, yeah, exactly. So this is the South Curve. So they would come up here, loop round that you can see here, back round onto the autobahn, basically. So
I believe the loop would have been off to the right.
okay, so would it have been? Where are we? We're going right here.
Yeah, I believe. Actually, the South Curve was just inside here. Not quite on the same path we're following, but essentially around this motel hotel. So essentially where we've got this motel over here and this Burger King over here and a petrol station as well, this is essentially, we're standing, as far as I can tell from maps and so, like in the middle of the south curve, which was, again, it was tighter, it was smaller.
Yeah, and this was the original south curve as well.
Exactly,
So
from 1921.
The longest point of the track, which we kind of got a showcase of, didn't we? Just how long that stretch of road was for the cars back then. And you can see why they shortened it.
Oh
every
yeah,
now and then,
to make the
because-
race more interesting.
Exactly.
I think they shortened it in the 60s, the 80s or so. It's twice, so it's around then.
Yeah.
But essentially what they'd be doing is then travelling back down this way, and that big straight that we just came down, they'd go and do it all again.
Exactly. Then back up to the north curve.
Even if you look on Google Maps, they're marked there if you want to come and see them yourselves. There's a supposed model of the south curve, and then the kind of the beginnings of the south, like death wall curve. But that's all out in the woods, and we don't know if we're going to be able to get there, what we're going to be able to see, but we're going to try.
We'll give it a try.
Yeah, let's have a look. So, walking into the woods here, it's going to be a lot of cyclists going past us like that, because this is like one of the nicest bike roads in Berlin. It's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice and cool as well.
It is. It's called the Grunewald, which means the green forest. Guess how they came up with the name? So now is about the time I should tell you that there's a protected and violent species of animal in these woods.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, which is wild pigs.
Right.
If we do see one, you are... we're on it. This is
Ow.
it. I found it. And it hit you with a pig. So right beneath our feet here, and you should be able to... Basically, there should be some concrete beneath a bunch of moss. And yeah, we're going to do a little bit more exploring. Show it to you.
Okay, I think we found it. These paving slabs here. This is it. This is the 100 scale model.
1 to 100.
1 to 100 scale model of the south curve that essentially was never built, but planned.
So this would have been another 43-degree incline right here.
Yep, so they wanted to do something very similar. It would have obviously helped with the average speed, made it even quicker. You can see the banked kind of corner here is what they wanted to do with it. And I guess it's very, very weird, this scale model. No one knows anything about it or why.
Every single source I found, and bear in mind with things that are a bit niche like this, especially online, you often get everyone quoting from the same thing.
Yeah.
So more research needed, but I couldn't find one person who says we know who built this, when and why. So, I mean, it's obviously a good bit of broken up concrete. My guess...
Like a test to just show the...
My guess is that it's actually probably from after World War II. And I'm basing that on pure vibes. So I don't know, but it kind of gives me that idea. And actually, this is one of my favorite things about Berlin, by the way, is that there's so much abandoned stuff, so much stuff that's kind of just out there to explore. And yeah, it might be niche, but at the same time, that's why I want to make these videos and show them to you and bring the F1 genius here. So, I mean, the only thing left to do is have you race around the South Curve.
The model south curve.
Yeah, could you make brum sounds, please?
Okay, let me get to it and try not to break my ankle. So this is the point it meets on this scale model of what would have been the new south curve, and then cars would go meow, all the way through here, round another kind of banked turn. Oh, you can really see here actually, kind of showcasing how much of a banking it would be, I guess, this bit here that's still kind of in better condition, showed how much they would then fly through here back onto the main straight before then doing the same thing at the north curve. So it would probably have made, well, they're not braking to nothing speeds. They'd have been able to carry the speed like on the north curve, so would probably have boosted it by maybe an extra like 10k or something.
Miles,
10 kph, yeah. Because you wouldn't constantly be slowing down to take a very tight turn. You still had to obviously slow down to a point. And and it was still very tricky, the north curve that had this kind of banking, but yeah, they wanted to make it even faster, and this has to be some kind of like model to test how it
all works.
how it was going to work, and
perhaps to show everybody just how steep the 43 degrees is, you can
Maybe.
stand on there with both feet.
yeah, well on here, like, there you go. This is the most, there you go, very precariously balanced, but that kind of just shows, obviously 100 times bigger. But they did actually cut away the forest for it, didn't they?
Yes. And so they cleared the way, but World War II, they never got around to building it. It was never built after. But there's something cool about the clearance I want to show you and tell you when we get there. So, I mean, the fastest way there is to take the...
Yeah.
I'll meet you there. It's remarkably hard to see on a little camera like this, but in front of us is something quite rare in Berlin, is a hill.
Okay. This is steep.
Sing a little Lord of the Rings music.
This is actually so steep.
Do you remember the taste of strawberries, Mr. Frodo?
It's even steeper now. Wow. Okay. That's quite the drop. So this is the top, where the curve was going to be.
We're now standing on top of what was, well, the planned south curve.
It was. Yeah, you can very much see, obviously when we were at the north curve, you couldn't really feel the scale because obviously the wall of death curve was no longer there. But here, just stood at the top of this hill and looking right down here to think that's where the bottom of the banking would have been, really kind of gives you that scale of how crazy the turn was.
So they did clear all the trees here to make way for this area to build this thing. But as I say, it never went into use as a racetrack. However, it was used. So after World War II, Berlin is occupied. One of the occupying powers is the US. They find this big area in the forest, completely cleared of trees. And, this great big earthen wall here, which means shooting range. And that's what they used it for. We hope that you have enjoyed watching this. All of these things are really quite easy to come and find. They're all marked on Google Maps. Bring some sandwiches.
Yeah, it's quite a trek. As we mentioned, it's a massive circuit. So to get from the north to the south curve is a bit of a trek. You need a car, but it's good fun.
Yeah, there's quite a lot to come and see. And this one-time F1 course is now a hill in the woods.
Yeah, very cool. It's really, really cool to do this with you as well. Obviously, we're old school mates and we've got that very limited crossover of F1 and Berlin. So it was cool that we got to do something.
To help out, if you want to be a good person after watching this video, go follow P1 with Matt and Tommy. And I'll see you next time on this channel with whatever Berlin history is coming next.
Ready?
Yep.
Right, I want to show you how steep it is. So, science experiment with a pine cone. I don't know if you'll even see this on camera, but here we go. Right, another pine cone. Take 2. Pine cone. You can't see it rolling down.
I think this is the worst thing I've ever recorded. I don't think you're cut out to be a scientist. You're more of a brainiac.
Yeah, you can tell I got a D in science at school. Right. Stick.
I'm deleting this.
Yeah, fair. Oh, a spider web in the face.